Welcome on in to Inside Black and Gold. Steve Geller along with Jeff Nowak, and we are talking post-Saints preseason action. Winner for the Black and Gold, taking down Arizona Cardinals, and nice drive. We'll get into all of it, but overall, at least you have the positive of a victory we can build on.
Yeah. I got we got a kicker coming off the field like he just won the Super Bowl. We got a lot. I got an actual like game shirt. Only took a year, so I got that. I'm back in. I've gone from my road hotel back to my home hotel. So that's exciting. The weirdest moment of this road trip, this entire camp experience to this point, by far, was Sunday morning, leaving the hotel in Phoenix, and in my head I was like, "Oh, it'll be nice to get home." and by that it was like the hotel that I've been staying at for like this has become my home. There's a dog here that I see every day. There's been a dog named Oliver that has literally been here as long as I have. I don't know what this dog's deal is, but I see him every morning, and it was like, oh, it'd be nice to get home and see the dog. Because every morning I go downstairs at like 6:30, get a coffee, and the dog's there, and it's very homey. But
who knows? Maybe the dog can do better along the offensive line than Ollie. The dog can do better than Ollie, the offensive lineman.
Oh, there you go. You get nice, isn't? Yeah. Ollie is a big boy. He's got a hair tie. He's anyway. He's got an Instagram account if you want to check that out. But anyway, yeah, this is going to be a podcast. This is kind of a weird schedule because it was a Saturday game. Yeah, and we have training camp practice the rest of the week. No joint practices. We'll get into that in a second here. But like normally, I would use this episode to kind of do 3 up, 3 down, and like really just react to the game, and then maybe the one later in the week to do some film. But I'm going to kind of meld those together, because we're really not going to talk about this game much beyond today because it's a preseason game. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. And we're going to be looking forward to the 49ers game where I expect to see starters again. So we'll get into that. Second segment, we'll do the 3 up. And yes, we're going to talk about Spencer Rattler. Third segment, spoilers. Third segment, we're going to do 3 down. And yes, we're going to talk about Trevor Penning. So strap in.
We're giving you exactly the content you're asking for.
Yeah. But first things first, Charlie Smyth, right? He's not going to be in my 3 up because, while his first ever kick in the NFL, game winner, awesome moment. It was a 37-yard kick. That's kind of the baseline of what he has to be able to do. And I kind of see that as like, that's a cliff that if you fall off it, then you're in big trouble. If you don't fall off a cliff, then you're just still where you should be. So I'm not going to put him in 3 up, but I did think it was an awesome moment. Got a chance to talk to him coming off the field. When I asked for Charlie, the guy, so they just kind of bring him over, right? And looked at me like I had 3 heads. Like, you want to talk to the UDFA kicker? And I was like, yeah, why not? Give this kid his moment. So just for perspective, like, this kid's from Ireland. This time last year, he had never kicked a American football. Like, not just never kicked in a game. He had never kicked one. Like, he hadn't even tried. 354 days later, and I know this because he said it, he's on the field in Arizona kicking a game winner. Honestly, I'm just mad at Spencer for not making it like a 60-yard kick, because that would have been really cool.
A little more cherry on the top of it, right?
The dude can make it from 6. I think you could make a 70-yard kick if you really needed to. I think.
What was it, 66 in warmups that you mentioned?
He made 66 in warmups. Now, what people aren't telling you is that prior to that 66-yard kick, I watched him miss from 55 and 59. But he knocked it through from 66 with room to spare, and that's the true beauty of Charlie, is that leg is insane. And I think that's like next year when I think this kicker battle is really going to be a thing, because you're going to keep him around all year in that international spot. I think Blake's gonna get a run for his money, and maybe this year, maybe if Blake falters this year and you turn to the young kid, who knows? But that's going to be, it does make that 2-minute drive feel a lot more manageable when all you got to do is get to like the 50, and you give yourself a shot. Right? Because the defense really doesn't tighten up on those 2-minute scenarios until you get past the 50. But if you can make it from 68, you give yourself a chance. Like in the past, that would be a Hail Mary. If you only got to the 50 in a 3-point scenario, you would throw a Hail Mary. In this situation, you might just try the kick because he can get it there. Now it's probably a low percentage scenario. But either way, we watched him knock it through from 66, and that's cool. I don't know if I've ever seen a kicker in a Saints uniform kick the ball as far as he has. But this is the interview I had with Charlie Smyth coming off the field. All right, I'm here with Charlie Smyth. You know, Charlie, a 37-yard field goal in a preseason game, the uninformed observer might look at that and say, okay, what's the big deal? But we know that's your first NFL kick. It's your first kick in a game setting, in a football setting. How meaningful was that moment for you?
Well, like, to have it as basically a game winner, it was obviously added a bit more tension to it, but I was just saying to myself, just trust my process. Hey, Spencer! I was just saying to myself, trust the process, and I would let everything else take care of itself, and everything I was doing was just thinking about what I can control. And I mean, to have that in your game winner, first ever game for a game winner is just the stuff of dreams, honestly, because it's 354 days since I first kicked in American football. When I first tried it out, I wasn't even thinking about the NFL. And then I got an email 3 weeks later saying the NFL is opening up its pathway for international players, kickers and punters. And I just sort of perked up when I got that. And just from that, to be from there, reading an email to here in Arizona hitting a game winner, it's just stuff of dreams, honestly. But I can't talk to my family and friends back home because I'm sure they're all watching, even though it's probably like 5 a.m. back home right now. But I mean, yeah, it's unbelievable. It's just stuff of dreams, honestly.
Smith or Colin Farrell?
Well, here's the funny thing. So you heard that kind of cutting in and out. So what you're not hearing is Robert, the engineer, in my ear being like, wrap it up. Your batteries are literally dead.
Oh, man.
Because I had forgotten. Like, normally I go down there with a spare set of batteries and I'll change them at halftime, but I forgot them up in the booth. I was like, we'll get it. Right. But like, they were like dead. And like, they were dead to the point that you could hear it cutting out. But yeah, Charlie, you know, it sounds like it was an interview like he just won the gold medal at the Olympics, right? Yeah. Like, and it's really cool for him. You know, like I think that means a lot, and that's an exciting moment. And so, yeah, like he said, his parents were watching at like 4 a.m. back in Ireland. So that's really cool, and that was a fun little moment to wrap up what was otherwise kind of a not so exciting game, right? Like there was a lot of bad offensive football in that game. And what's funny with this matchup, it got more exciting as you went in, not the beginning of it. Yeah, the beginning was rough, and we'll talk about that in the 3 down segment, the negativity segment, as I'll call it. But you know, the positive, one of the main positives, no real injuries coming out of that game. Spencer didn't practice. Yeah. Spencer Rattler didn't practice on Sundays, dealing with a thigh bruise, it sounds like, or something along those lines. Nothing significant. I don't expect him to miss another day, but it did mean Jake got all the reps in practice, just like Spencer did the day Jake was out. So we'll get into that. A couple other things. Shaq Davis, he's back, baby.
Hello.
You remember Shaq Davis training camp last year, practice squad. He ended up going to the Eagles. Funny thing is, like, I saw a clip go viral on Twitter earlier this offseason of people making fun of Shaq for his route running. And it's like, you guys are mean. Leave the kid alone. He's a freaking UDFA. People don't even know who they're making fun of. But either way, Shaq's back. Marquez Callaway, bye-bye. He did not last long, you know, and I love Marquez. You know, he's one of my favorite like personalities that the Saints have had over the last few years. He just did not look like an NFL receiver in these practices.
Personality means shit on the field, right?
Well, I mean, it's funny because he was never a burner. I've never called him a burner, but he had kind of get off speed. Like he was able to kind of accelerate and decelerate. Like he was never a separator, but he could get off coverage a little bit, like, and make a contested catch. But the guy I saw out there this week just had no juice. Like I don't know if maybe he's dealt with injuries, if he's just a little slower. He did not look like a guy who could impact an NFL offense. So it does not surprise me that he's gone. We'll see if Shaq maybe can kind of build on that. I know he was a guy people liked last year. He had a couple of really nice performances in the preseason. So we'll see. I think he's from South Carolina State, I want to say, Shaq Davis, but he was out of practice. I believe he's wearing number 80. So we'll see him more as the week goes on.
Jermaine Jackson's number. Well, yeah, former number, right?
Yeah, Jermaine Jackson is now on injured reserve. What we will not see is joint practices on Thursday and Friday against the 49ers. Kyle Shanahan called up Dennis Allen on Saturday and kind of broached the subject. Like, hey, we got a ton of injuries. I think 23 players didn't practice for the 49ers in their last practice ahead of their preseason game, which, I mean, the Saints are in a similar situation. They had 16 players out, but it does sound like the 49ers are much worse off. And so they're not coming down on Thursday and Friday. So whatever plan the Saints had for those practices and for this second preseason game, which I didn't expect to see starters, because typically what you'll see is the starters get heavy run in these preseason, in these joint practices. You've seen them; they're high intensity practices. Like, I would argue that those joint practice reps are more valuable, just generally speaking, in terms of the offense, than the preseason reps, where you don't want to put anything on tape, right? So you're really not doing much. Whereas you're not as worried about it against the team that you're not playing in the regular season. That tape is not out there for other teams to watch, so you might show stuff, right? No, we will not see that. They kind of confirmed prior to Sunday's practice that would not happen, and so we'll have to see. They're going to use that plan for offense defense practices. I know Bobby, I'm sure, is disappointed. He was coming out here specifically for the joint practices.
Yeah, and the whole situation to begin with, I thought, was a little odd on how it was set up. The fact that the Niners were going to go to Irvine for the practices and then head back to their digs and end up hosting a game, whereas instead of the Saints going to the Niners and just staying there for the preseason game Sunday. So unfortunately, like you said, I like those sessions too. Obviously, I feel like you get a lot of great work, and it'll be interesting, like you mentioned too, again, without these joint workouts happening, it would seem now, you'd want to get more of those reps in a game setting come Sunday with your first teamers, since they're not going to get those extended reps in practice now.
Yeah, and I think we have a clip in here of Dennis Allen. I think we have a clip in here of Dennis Allen talking about missing the joint practices. Let me find it real quick.
Cue it up.
The title says, "What are you missing out on with no joint?"
I think how it is out there with that legal cannabis.
That's true.
The ability to go against somebody else, see some different schemes, go against some different people. I think that's what you lose. I think we have good practices out here. I think we have a lot of intensity in practice out here. And so, look, I think anytime you get a chance to kind of change some things up a little bit, it kind of reinvigorates, creates a little bit more focus, some of those things. But I don't look at this as any major deal.
Major deal. Yeah, so he says that. I don't buy it. I think he's a little pissed because I think these joint sessions are important to this team. I think they had a lot of their offseason kind of scheduling aimed at this week, and it was going to be I know Bobby's talked about this a lot. It was going to be a really good measuring stick for exactly where you are as a team, as an offense, as a defense, and they're just not going to see it. So they're going to have to figure that out. They're going to have to use the preseason games for that purpose. It's the second year in a row we've had this happen, right? Last year it was the Texans, and it was going into the second preseason week, or maybe it was the third. I think it was the third preseason week. Yeah, it was the third, because they started at home against the Chiefs and they went on the road for the joint practices against the Chargers, and they were supposed to come back and host the Texans. But for the same reason, the Texans called up and said, hey, we're going to cancel these. We got too many injuries, whatever. So, where they're going to have to make it work. Last year, you at least had the joint session with the Chargers. This year, you're not going to have them. So they're going to have to figure it out and go from there. But we'll see.
They'll just do the media flag football game and scrimmage against you guys.
Oh God, we would lose. But yeah, one other thing that I'll hit before we move on. One big change for this first preseason game, and I'm not going to point to this and say this is why the offense didn't work. Klint Kubiak not on the sidelines. And it's a change. Like, it's something you see a lot in college. It's something you see a lot when college guys go to the NFL. Like Joe Brady has always been a booth guy when he's calling plays, right? Matt Canada, I want to say, was a booth guy when he was calling plays. But some coaches like it, some coaches don't. That's where Klint was for the first week of the preseason, and it kind of has, and it means that the communication between quarterback and offensive coordinator, at least from the quarterback side of the equation, goes through Andrew Junoko, the quarterback's coach, on the sideline, because Klint can talk directly to Derek. Derek can't respond to Klint, right? When the offense coordinator is calling plays, it gets piped into the quarterback's headset, but there's no mic to talk back. So if Derek wants to relay stuff to Klint, it's got to go through Junoko or put on a headset on the sideline. So I think we'll see clips of throughout the season if Klint stays up there, if Derek kind of put on that headset and chat, and I'm sure there'll be some fun memes that come out of that. But I did ask Derek kind of how that experience went, and here's that clip. How you make those changes?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think him and Coach Janoko have such a great relationship. So it's like, if I'm talking to Janok, it's like talking to Klint, and so it is different. I'm used to the play caller being on the field. You go to, hey, I'm thinking, this, or what about this, or hey, I'm seeing this. I know when it's this. Let's do that. So those conversations is kind of still in between. But at the same time, I thought it was clean. I don't know if he's going to be up or down every time. I don't know, but it's different. But it's also at the same time, you just come over, do your thing, and then. There's one voice talking to you. It's Coach Janoko. So, I don't know if one way's better than the other, but I thought it was good today.
Is this the first time in your career that you've had a play caller in the press box?
No, not the first time. But it's been some years since I've had that.
Yeah, I did have someone tell me that Derek did it back in 2016 with the Raiders, where he had the OC up in the booth. And if you go back and look at Derek's career, 2016 was his best season. So it clearly wasn't a negative for him then. Not saying he's going to have his best season because the offense coordinator is back up in the booth, but kind of history would tell you that it isn't a problem for him. So we'll see how that goes. But DA didn't commit to that being the case all year long. He did mention that last year, Joe Woods, the defensive coordinator, started the season up in the booth. About midway through the year, they decided, hey, we're better off with you having you on the sidelines. We want you to be able to work with the players one-on-one, like face-to-face. And so they brought him down. Now, Joe doesn't call the plays, so it's a little different of a scenario. But if they get to a point in this season where they feel like this would be a better scenario if we have you down here, they're gonna bring him down. I think it's gonna be one of those situations where week 3 the offense isn't working, and we're gonna be like, what can we change? And that's going to be something that gets pointed. That's the only reason I'm bringing it up. I don't think that scenario was any culprit of why the first team offense didn't move the ball. But I'm just kind of setting that up now that if things don't go well, we're going to hear that talked about a lot more.
Yeah, I didn't hear I guess they're not going to experiment with him, Kubiak, back on the field for the preseason at all. They're just going to stick with him in the booth because that's what he wants, huh?
DA kind of said, like, hey, wherever he's the most comfortable, that's where I want him to be, right? Wherever feel like he can do his job the best, that's where I want him to be. And unless the players say, hey, this isn't working for me, I think you'll see it continue. For a guy like Spencer Rattler, for instance, that's most college offensive coordinators are up in the booth. So that's nothing new for him. What's new for him is hearing the coach in his headset at all, because I think they just changed that this year, college football, where you can communicate directly to the quarterback. In the past, that's why you see those signs on, the weird kind of symbols and stuff on the sideline. That's how they would signal in the plays. Like, that's because you can't talk directly to the quarterback. So that's the new thing for him. And that would be new whether the guy was standing there on the sideline or up in the booth. And for Jake, similar, right? Like we're going to hear a clip from Jake in the next segment. But he said it's something, it's just get used to it, right? It's just a matter of having to feel comfortable. Like Derek said, of like going to Andrew Janoko and having him be that stand-in. And as long as Klint and Andrew are on the same page, it really doesn't change. Now, if that communication does not go the way it's supposed to, it'll become a problem. But it doesn't sound like that's an issue. And Andrew and Klint work together pretty well. So we'll see. But it's just something. It's just a note, right? It's just something that if you're at the game and you're trying to find the offense coordinator on the sideline, you're not going to see him, and you're not going to see that big play sheet, right? Yeah,
definitely. Like you mentioned, a difference for sure from what we've seen in the past from this squad.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot of differences. And the funny thing is, I see a lot of reactions to this offense. Guys, the offense you saw in that game, it's not really like people are reacting to it like, oh, it doesn't look any different. You're right, because that's not the offense that they're going to run. That's like, if you have like one page of a playbook, that's what you're playing. So we didn't see the motion that you would typically see. We didn't see misdirection. We didn't see a lot of wide zone.
Yeah, they got the play from Tecmo Bowl and just put them out on the field there.
Right. It's like if you're playing Madden and they give you like 1 3-play option, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, okay, you got a slip screen, you got this, and then that's what you ran. And, but to be fair, the Cardinals defense also wasn't doing anything exotic either. But all right, let's wrap up that segment. And we're going to come back. We're going to react more to the game. I'm going to go through some of the film notes that I was able to take down. There's a good bit on my Twitter account, at least a good bit from the first team offense and defense. I usually lose my energy in terms of tweeting clips after about 3 or 4 because the reaction is always obnoxious because it's never like, oh, this guy made a good play. But what about the guy who's not even here? Well, what about anyway? That's usually my experience with that. But if you want to check those out, it's at Jeff_Nowak. Some good clips from the offense, some good clips of what Chris Olave was doing. The defense should have you excited, or at least the pass rush should have you excited, because that's the biggest part of what we saw in terms of first team defense. But all right, this is Inside Black and Gold. I am Jeff Nowak. He's Steve Geller. I'm in Irvine. He's in Louisiana, and we will come back. We will do the 3 up. We'll start with positivity, because I need that. I need that in my morning here. So stick around on Inside Black and Gold. Subscribe. And we're back on Inside Black and Gold. It's Monday, and we're talking about a game that happened on the Saturday and does not impact the standings whatsoever. But when has that stopped us? It's an off day for the Saints today. That gives us a good time to kind of reset and get ready, move forward. So let's talk about the things that went well. And the first thing I want to talk about is what should have Saints fans excited. This should be the most confidence you come out of this game with, and that is the pass rush that we have been talking about sure looked legit in week 1. And we saw every piece of it, right? It was the only position on defense that you didn't have at least one piece missing, right? We saw all 5 of Cam Jordan, Carl Granderson, Chase Young, Peyton Turner, and Isaiah Foskey, right? We saw the NASCAR package. We saw Cam Jordan line up at defensive tackle. We saw Brian Brzee spin moves. We saw Chase Young get into the backfield. We saw Carl Granderson get into the backfield and light up Desmond Ridder, right? It just felt right, and that was good, because it's tough when you're watching training camp and you're like, okay, is it just that the Saints offensive line is that bad, or is this pass rush going to be something legitimate that you can build on this season and that can actually impact this season? And, I do think that the Saints offensive line is definitely not elite, but I think in matchups where you're going against a under leveraged offensive line, right? Like some teams are going to have a really good offensive line, and that's going to be a matchup that you look at and say, okay, how much impact can you have? But not every, there's a lot of teams like the Saints, right? There's a lot of teams that you wouldn't say the offensive line is the strength of their group. And I think in those matchups, you can really lean on that pass rush. And this was the caveat is, hey, the Cardinals are not playing their first team offense, right? So take that for what it is. It's kind of one of those situations, which kind of like Charlie, like I talked about, hey, the baseline is this. And, and obviously I didn't have Charlie in my 3 up, but like, if you couldn't be elite against that pass rush, that offensive line, I would be concerned. The amount of pressure they were able to generate, and the amount that they were able to just mess up that game for the Cardinals offense. Because like Desmond Ridder's trying to win a job too. Like he's got to come out of that feeling like I did. I had a terrible day. There was a point midway through the second quarter, the Cardinals had -3 passing yards. And then beyond that, the other element, 4th down defense, right? I think they had 3 4th downs before. Those are the plays throughout a game. They get overlooked. When you get stops on 4th down, whether it's at the goal line, whether it's at midfield, whether it's on 4th and 1, whether it's on 4th and 4, whatever, those are turnovers. Like they don't go into the book as like an interception or a forced fumble, but those are effectively turnovers. And when you're the team that can consistently get off the field on 4th and short, that's a huge win for you, right? Like that can change the momentum of a game like that. And seeing them get that done, I can't recall if it was 3 or 4, but definitely at least 3 times they got off the field on 4th down and gave the offense the ball at plus field position. That's massive. So I just thought, in terms of what your expectations could have been for the offensive line, for Chase Young, for Brian Brzee, even Cam Jordan lining up on the inside. There was one play, it was a draw. I tweeted this. You had Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan, and then the other side you had Brian Brzee and Chase Young. Cam Jordan gets doubled. They run a draw, right? So it looks for a second like it might work, but then Cam is able to clear the double, force the running back to cut back. I think it was DeMercado, and instead of a 15-yard game and a terrible kind of collapse on 3rd and long, it was 3rd and 15 or 3rd and 14. It's a 9-yard gain that Chase Young is able to clean up because Cam Jordan got off his double team and forced the cut back inside, slowed down the run, and you got to the point where you forced a punt deep in Cardinals territory. So like those are the type of situations that, you know, you got to be able to get off the field there. An 8-yard run on 3rd and 15 is a win for the defense. And so if you can get your pass rush group on the field and still have a plus run defender in Cam Jordan, that's nice. I like that. So I thought that was by far the biggest stock up position for me.
Yeah, like you mentioned with the sacks right away, it's like they got 4 on the day, had some passes defensed, got some I think it was like 7 hits on the quarterback even, some tackles for loss. Overall, that early unit did really well.
They got a lot more work than I expected them to.
Right. I just remember like the biggest negative for me was seeing I think it was a 22-yard run from Desmond Ridder. They let him escape and got that leaky yardage you hear about.
Yeah, I think it was Foskey kind of lost contain there. And I mean that's I think if you had to pick one player in the pass rush group that had a tough day, it was Foskey. I think his eyes got a little big trying to get to the quarterback, and he didn't keep contain. But you know, if you're talking about the 5th pass rusher in your depth chart is the one you're concerned about, and then okay, he's the 5th pass rusher in your depth chart. I think Peyton's going to end up being more of an inside rusher this year, but we'll have to see. Either way, like you're talking about 2 guys that I just want to stay on the field. So that would be a win for both of those guys, and they'll just be kind of good depth throughout the course of the season. But yeah, Foskey has some stuff to work on, no question.
And just like when you were mentioning some guys, you know, just one of the guys getting a lot more run than I expected, Chase Young, man. And yeah, I know fans were excited to see him too in action.
Yeah, I did not expect him to get that many reps.
Right.
You know, he was in late into the second quarter. And so that was cool. Like that's just a sign that this team is completely comfortable with where he is physically right now. You know, I do think that they even got him some early down work. I don't know how much early down work you're going to actually ask him to do because I think your best run stopping group is Cam Jordan and Carl Granderson, right? But you know, I do want to see him get that. I want to see him be an option in those scenarios because, okay, what happens if Carl goes out hurt and you need him on the early down? So that's good work for him right now. Let's move on. The next guy I want to talk about, preseason A.T. Perry. Baby. Man, and this is we talked about this, I don't know. I think I might have done the roster projection on my own, but I had him on my roster projection. I think that was a bit of I think a lot of people had already quit on him. But one of the reasons I wasn't ready to quit on him yet is because he just, whether you believe it's a thing or not, he just seems like a gamer, man. He just seems like the kind of guy who shows up, the lights come on, and he's a different guy. And, you do need to show up in practice, right? Dennis Allen kind of talked about that. Like you can't just show up for the games. We need to see it in practice too. But at the same time, I much prefer a guy who shows up in the games then and maybe doesn't put his best foot forward in practice than the alternative.
Is it you feel like Perry's not giving that effort out in the training camp practices and just, gives it more in the game times, or is it something else?
I don't think it's like an active decision. I don't think it's something he does. He's like, this is practice. I'm not going to go hard. I think it's just, in those, some guys just, you get it's the inverse of Trevor Penning. We're going to talk about Trevor Penning. One of the issues is, he could look as good as he wants in practice. And he struggles in practice too, but like there are points where it's like, okay, he seems to be figuring out. Then he gets into a game and it's like he's a different guy in the opposite way, where it's like he seems to forget all the technique he's been working on, all the plans that you sent him in there with go out the window, and he just kind of goes blank and just panics and does whatever. It's like the opposite for AT. It's like the light bulb turns on and he's like, okay, I got this.
Right. Time to clock in and do work.
And it's tough because he's whether he's putting up numbers in practice or not, or putting up plays in practice, he's always going to have that 6'5" long wingspan and to be able to make plays that other guys can't make. And you didn't even really see that as an impact. Like his plays, he had a really nice comeback route on that drive in the first half for Jake Haener. He had, and so he had 4 catches, 85 yards. It's really not even the whole story because he had a 30-something yard pass interference that he drew. I wish there was this, maybe there is, and if someone knows of it, let me know because I'd love to look at it. I want to see a list. I want to see a stat kept of like pass interference yards generated, because it's not going to count towards your receiving total. And I don't think it should. It's like the same principle as like you don't get an assist if someone takes a shot in basketball and makes a free throw because he got fouled. Like you don't get that assist, even though you really should, because you created points and that's the whole point of it. It's in this case, it's like, yeah, you created a 30-yard gain, but neither the quarterback or the wide receiver gets credit for that, even though it's an objectively huge play in the game. It's a 30-something yard pass play that you get a first down. So if you want to look at it that way, you're talking about 20 yards generated on 4.5 catches or whatever. Yeah. That's a massive day, especially in a preseason game. So yeah, good for him. I mean, again, I don't think he's going to win any accolades from his coaches for not being as efficient of a practice player, but there's something to be said for a guy that just shows up on game day, right? So that makes big plays in big moments, and that's what he did.
No, and it was nice to finally see that. I know the practice notes that you and everyone else have really been talking about. He hasn't been a factor there, and like you mentioned it when you started talking about Perry, the term gamer. I know Dennis Allen's like, oh, he doesn't believe in that.
Yeah, he didn't seem to be a huge fan of the question, even because I think the concept annoys him, because it's like you got to do it in practice, you got to see it in practice, right? But the fact stands: every time I see him on the field playing in games, he seems to make an impact. So, and this was, I would say he was, other than those first two series with Olave out there, he's probably the next wide receiver on that depth chart. Obviously, Cedric Wilson was out there, but in terms of being an X, it's got to be AT, right? Because Cedric's not going to play the X in those scenarios. Cedric, I thought, had some nice opportunities. He had a nice punt return. They tried to hit him on a bubble screen, didn't work. But yeah, so preseason AT Perry, it's no longer a question, it's a thing.
And it's hard to complain about, obviously. You're glad it's not the inverse.
Exactly. It would be way worse, like a Mason Tipton, right? We've seen him blow up in camp. When he was hurt, I'm not going to hold that against him. But as far as we know right now, he's the opposite, where he's a practice player, an all airline drive, as Bobby likes to say.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you want to see him out there. Like if you had to make a decision between AT and Mason Tipton now, you would look at it and say, well, I've seen AT prove it in a game. I have not seen Mason prove it in a game. And so I would err toward AT, a guy that I know the production can be there with, and he's also a bigger guy who I feel like should be able to block. So, I think he's still got a lot more to do, and he's definitely going to win over his coaches a little bit. But in terms of the agenda of AT making this roster again, he gave himself a nice
right. Exactly.
All right. We're going to do it. You ready to talk about Spencer Confidential over here? That's a terrible Netflix movie. I don't know why I made that reference. You ready?
Man, everyone is jonesing for some Rattler action.
Oh, man, the rattlesnake. My only issue with the Spencer Rattler discourse is that there's a lot of disingenuity about it, in that, he's going to do nice things and we're going to talk them to death. We're not going to talk about any of the mistakes. And there were some mistakes, right? Rookie in his first preseason game. We don't need to harp on the mistakes. But if you didn't know any better, you would think all he did was go out there, lead a touchdown drive, and then a 2-minute drill for a score. And that was his entirety of the game. He also had 3 straight drives that ended in punts. One of those drives started at the 49, and they went 3 and out. So it wasn't all perfect. Like we do need to couch it, and he's a rookie. He's getting better. And there's that. But it does seem like there's a level of like, okay, I get it. You hate Derek Carr, so everything Spencer does that you even slightly appreciate, you're gonna fly over the freaking moon for it. All that said, I thought he played really well in his first preseason game. The throw to AT Perry was a dime. He forced that pass interference. Like you could say, in some instances, you could say like, he made a throw. The defensive back panicked and fouled him, but it wasn't necessarily it was a really nice throw by the quarterback. That run into the end zone, while it wasn't the design, it showcased the athleticism, the ability that he has that maybe the other two guys don't have quite as much, in terms of neither Derek Carr or Jake Haener gets that ball into the end zone on the run like that. The 2-minute drive, we've seen him execute that in camp, and he did it again, right? He went to Samson Nakua for a nice gain to really kind of create it. The only thing I'm annoyed about is that he ran it too well, because I wanted to see Charlie Smyth hit from 60. But no, I mean, I think there's a lot of positives that you take away from that. And this is what Spencer had to say after the game.
We could have done a lot more, things cleaner, made it easier for ourselves, but we kept it tight till the end. And I mean, you couldn't ask for a better finish in a 2-minute situation.
Yeah, I mean, just the poise in those situations, right? Even the touchdown, everything went wrong in the red zone. Still managed to get a touchdown. It kind of bungled the end of game scenario slightly. Like he ran the 2-minute drill effectively and got into scoring range. You really want that kick to be a game winner with no time left on the clock. Instead, they spent too long in the huddle. They had to call a timeout rather than take a penalty and push the kick back. So they kicked it with like 10 seconds. But I mean, that's the kind of tiny little detail stuff that you work on in practice, right? That's why they run those drills of. They even did the thing where they throw the ball out of bounds to burn some clock, but I don't even know if he did that. You really want to throw it up in the air a little bit to gain a few more seconds. So I mean, there's this detail stuff, right? I think there's a lot of detail stuff up and down the roster that you would want to improve on. But I think if you're looking at this game, and you're saying, what did Spencer have to do to instill confidence and to really kind of continue to push forward that quarterback battle? It was the game that he had, and so I was really pleased with that.
Yeah, overall, a real positive outing just from him. Like you mentioned, it wasn't all pretty, but the positives is that you can build on the things you did well, and obviously now it makes correcting the mistakes a little easier as well. Too, when you have that victory that you end up pulling out. And sadly, in all this, I feel like you want to talk about how Derek Carr sucks and how great Spencer Rattler is. Nobody even cares what Jake Haener did.
Yeah, we're talking about Jake in a second here, but yeah, what I will say for Spencer is, hey, okay, you went out in the second half, you played well in the second half. A 2-minute drill, you're talking about going against the backups to the backups, in some cases to the backups, right? So yeah, I'd like to see him come out against the 49ers and build on that, right? Because I expect you'll flip it, and Spencer will get the second team reps like you have been all camp, and Jake will get the third team reps. And so that's where I need to see him continue to build on that. But you do have to kind of slice it up like that, right? Now, yeah, we will talk about Jake, because I don't think it would be fair to go into this and not talk about Jake after what I would consider to be a really solid game, right? He got into this late in the first quarter, right? And I think Spencer and Jake had very similar days when you kind of break it down, right? Both guys led 2 scoring drives. Both guys executed in a 2-minute situation. Spencer's was like a legit 2-minute situation. Jake's was like starting at his own 10-yard line after a 4th down stop with 47 seconds and 2 timeouts. Like that's a really low percentage scenario, but it's the type that we have seen in camp. So it's kind of cool that you run these situational sets in camp, and then you get basically the exact same scenario in a game for both young quarterbacks in a quarterback competition. You couldn't have scripted it better. You couldn't ask for it better. Spencer obviously led his down. They kicked the field goal. Charlie got it. And Jake, he had a nice completion over the middle of the field. Then he threw a bomb to A.T. Perry, who my only critique is I feel like he could have, if he was a little more aware of where he was on his line, he could have kept his feet inbound and actually scored on that play. Now, 58-yard completion, you're really grasping at straws for a complaint here. But, that would have been a monster highlight. It was a really good highlight. It would have been an insane. It would have been like a national highlight if he had been able to keep his feet in bounds and score, because he had him beat. He was clean. The only reason he didn't score is because he went out of bounds. But it was a really nice throw by Jake. It's one of those situations where I don't know if you're even doing that in an actual game, because before the half you might play it a little safe, but they let him sling it.
Let's let it rip, right?
Right. They let him sling it, and he got the job done. I mean, that ball traveled 60 yards in the air. Like, I hear all about Spencer's arm, right? Jake's got an arm too. Like, all these guys can sling it. And that ball was on the money, and that was impressive. The only real difference in the days really was, okay, Spencer was able to get that ball over the goal line on the review. Yeah. If that's called short and it's 4th and 1, and maybe they kick it, maybe they go for it, I don't know what happens, but that's kind of the difference in their days. I thought Jake had a really solid day. I think he went 9 of 13. Spencer went 9 of 17. Jake had a really nice pitch and catch to AT on the sideline as well. And so I think both guys did well. Let's hear from Jake in the locker room after the game.
I play my ass off every step of the way. Even when I'm getting hit and things are tough, like I'm gonna bring that energy because my team needs it, right? Like there needs to be that X factor, I think, when you're playing quarterback. And for me, that's kind of always how I've played, and I'm not gonna change for anyone.
What's the operation kind of like? Because Klint was up in the booth, and
it's a different dynamic, right? And I think that goes for all of us in the quarterback room. We got to get a feel for how he's going to call things, how a game prep week looks like, what that looks like, what a call sheet from him looks like, what those things are going to be like. So I think the preseason for us right now is just kind of getting a feel for each other and what we like, how we want to prepare, and then obviously translating that to the season, working the kinks out, and being super efficient when we get to Sundays and regular season.
You talked a bit in the spring about how you wanted to kind of build on last year's preseason. Did you feel like you did that?
I mean, I think I played efficient. I think my decision-making and my decisiveness in this game compared to what I was like last year was night and day different. I feel super confident. There was one little thing that we had on, the ball I tried to throw to Mims there. Little issue on my end, but other than that, I thought I played clean. I thought I, made the right reads and got the ball out of my hand fast, and tried to put us in positions to make plays.
Reading the defense and everything too.
I felt like my reads were efficient. I felt like, we'll go back and watch the tape and analyze, exactly how it went. But my first impression was I felt positive about the performance.
What did you see in the deep ball to 18?
Yeah, Klint, I was happy that Klint gave me an opportunity to throw the ball down the field. In that situation, 22 seconds left, you're on the 20-yard line. There's, I don't think, a high percentage of getting points, but when you have a double move and a team that's playing four trace like we were talking about, to a 3-by-1 situation, AT's on an island, and it gave us an opportunity to throw the ball down the field.
He's just a guy, that's size. You can just feel comfortable.
Yeah, we have a good connection too. I was telling him all week long that he's my guy in the preseason, and we're going to continue to feed 17. So I'm confident with him when he plays in those games and gets into game situations. Dude flips the switch.
But they're guys like that just once the lights come on, they're more efficient in games.
Yeah, I think you see that, right? Like the competitive spirit in guys, especially when they get comfortable and they get into a setting where they, they're immersed in it and they're there. That competitive, whatever, that nature takes over, and AT is one of those guys that flips that switch, and I feel really confident going to him all the time.
Apologies if they already asked it, but just everything you've gone through, did it mean anything extra?
Nah, man, listen, this is life, right? There's going to be ups and downs, bumps in the road, and a little cut on my face at the end of the day is not going to slow me down. I was supposed to miss a little time. I'm going to be out there every chance I can get. Can't keep missing practices, so I was happy to be out there the last couple of days, and it just puts things in perspective, right? Like, I get to play this game for a living, and I'm super fortunate, and I'm going to continue to do as long as I can.
Yeah, you heard Jake talking about a little cut on his face, and you see the bandage in some of those images.
Yeah.
He had it uncovered in the locker room, and I wasn't sure, what all it might look like. It was pretty gnarly, and he said he's getting the stitches out.
Is he going to be left with a scar there?
Oh yeah,
Huh?
And it's a big one. So he kind of looks like he's going to look like Drew a little bit.
Interesting, right?
But no, it's like a 2-inch. Like they had to clear out a good bit, I think. And he has stitches right now. They're coming out on Monday. But I if he got hit in the face, that would probably hurt a lot. And so I don't know. Like, that's something that I think you don't want to overlook. Like, he's been dealing with that this camp. That's definitely not something that's easy to deal with. You're trying to focus on winning a quarterback job, and he's having to have procedures done. He's trying to, all of a sudden you're worried about skin cancer for a young guy. He's dealt with that really well. And so, yeah, he's getting the stitches out, and they won't really having to deal with that going forward. But, I've been impressed with his approach throughout camp, right? Like, it's not an easy situation to suddenly, you got drafted last year, and now you're battling with a guy that everyone's super obsessed with. And, you're kind of the forgotten guy in that room.
Yeah.
But I think he's handled it well. There was a screenplay. I tweeted the video of this. The screen didn't work, right? But the impressive thing for me with Spencer is with Jake, he doesn't get rattled, right? Like, he was trying to get the ball to Cedric. He had to actually pump fake because there was a guy right in the throwing lane. So he pump faked, the guy bit on it, and he kind of sidearmed it to Cedric. And that's the type of kind of subtle quarterback play that, if all he did was dirt it, you'd be like, okay, yeah, it didn't work. But he was still able to kind of stay calm, get the ball there. I think that this is going to be, I think it's going to go down to the wire with the quarterbacks. And, there was a lot of ways this could have gone for both these guys. I thought both of themselves handled that game very, very well in terms of how they ran the offense. Both guys had some questionable throws. Both guys had some really nice throws, and you'll go from there. But he also talked about A.T. Perry, right? Like, he agrees, like, when A.T. gets out there, it's, you can see it. You can see kind of that competitive fire get going, and suddenly he's a little bit of a different guy. And they also have a connection. He talked about that. So good stuff all around.
Yeah, overall, with both the young quarterbacks the Saints have right now, fans should be just excited too, I think. I get that feel from both of them when they say, obviously, they've got that confidence, with the way they run the team, how they're feeling. I feel that more than I have with past, maybe some young guys that have been around. Like, I really do believe that both of these guys can be good leaders for teams. So interested to see how it shakes out, because I truly believe with you too, it could really go either way. I don't think the Saints, if Spencer Rattler really is the guy that's looking better, they're not going to feel any kind of hesitation to go with him as the number 2.
No. And I think it's going to come down to who do you think can run the offense the best this year, run the plan the best this year if they have to get into a game. Even if you go with Jake, you're not quitting on Spencer. The question becomes, if you do go with Spencer, do you devote a roster spot to Jake? And you'll see how that goes. But yeah, for perspective, like, the guy you're going to compare him to is Ian Book, right? Like, he's the most recent kind of 4th round pick, mid-round pick that you tried to develop. I don't think I ever saw the type of performance that we saw from either of those guys today from Ian Book in either of his preseason opportunities. He was here for 2 seasons in the preseason, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of how you look at it. And I think, for a team that's going into an offseason where they're going to have to rely on a young guy as a backup one way or the other, I think you're feeling okay about that. Like, there's a lot of things that you might look at and say, yeah, okay, I'm feeling questionable. I don't think whatever backup you go with, you're going to be feeling okay with. Okay, it's been a long segment, but I want to wrap it up. But there's a couple guys I want to talk about quickly, and we don't need to get into them a lot, but some guys I thought had a nice day. Kool-Aid McKinstry, another guy, rookie, first preseason game. I think as the game went on, he had some rough moments in coverage. He's learning, but there was 2 really nice plays early in the game on crossing routes. If you just go back to last season, crossing routes were a problem for the Saints. They were getting burned on them all year long. Twice on 3rd down, Kool-Aid starts on the right side, on the outside, carries the receiver all the way across the field. First one was a PBU, clean. Second one, he had to navigate kind of traffic in the middle of the field, managed to stay on the play, makes a tackle short of the sticks to force a punt. Those are the type of plays you want to see, right? So you want to see him gain confidence, and I thought he did. Willie Gay, we kind of saw the vision there, kind of that stand-up rusher. He was in the backfield a lot. You can see the athleticism. I feel like you're going to see him move around constantly. He's going to be kind of that Swiss Army knife for the defense, the same way Taysom Hill is a Swiss Army knife for the offense. Going to allow you to play a little bit more heavy, which should help you against the run. Thought he was really good. And then the last one, Jamal Williams, I thought he ran angry. He's been running angry all camp. He had a couple really nice runs in this game. The yards per carry weren't great, but the blocking wasn't great either. So I thought that he's a guy who I wanted to see something from. And there was one really nice run where he kind of broke to the right side, cut back. It was with the second team. I think it was like an 8-yard gain. And, those are the type of hard yards that I need him to be able to get, because I don't want Alvin to have to constantly be banging his head against the wall, right? I need Jamal to take some of that load off of him. I thought he did well.
Just going to have to take him away from his cats and his kid, and then I'll just be pissed off all season.
Yeah, I think that's a thing. He misses his cats, and he's angry about it. But yeah, anyone else you wanted to highlight before we move on?
Just the guy I have interest in. We kind of I think it was some text messages, the late usage of Samson Nakua, but just his body and the way he moves. I'm anxious to see more from him.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd like to ask DA this week where he is and what they think of him, because I expect to see more of him. We didn't really see, in a game where you didn't really have many receivers, didn't get in until the very end. And then on that 2-minute drive, he made a really clutch catch, and so we'll see how that continues. Kevin Austin got more run, and he had a nice catch in the red zone. I want to give him credit for that. There was a couple sketchy blocking moments. We'll talk more about the blocking as we go, but I think that's kind of can Samson take those reps, right? And I think he put a good foot forward on the minimum reps that he did get. So we'll see if maybe next week and beyond we see a little bit more of him. But yeah, I was a little surprised. I expected to get more kind of not first team run, Maybe even not first half run, but that third quarter, I expected to see more of him.
Maybe as one of the newer, fresher faces, it was like, all right, you're going to start way, way, way at the bottom and have to work your way even up more. I don't know.
Hold on. I'm good. I don't need it today. Okay. Thank you.
Housekeeping.
Okay. I'm going to leave that in the podcast. Because here's the thing. I was gone for 2 full days.
Nothing.
I had not had housekeeping come in here for like 3 days prior to leaving because I was like, I don't need it every day. And it's just like I'm in the room a lot working.
Yeah.
And so I was like, they'll definitely, of course they'll come. I'm going to be out of the state for 2 days. Of course they'll come. I come back yesterday. They have not been in here once. So I'm here kind of keeping track of stuff going on. And I missed practice yesterday because a flight got in late. Dennis Allen's press conference starts, and I'm just kind of tracking it from here. And wouldn't you know it, knock, 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 housekeeping. Like, what the hell have you been doing for 2 days?
Right.
and so they were in here 12 hours ago, and they just came in again. What's happening?
Now they're all about it after skipping you for those
it's
2
like
days.
They know. It's like their place. Like, you're in here working. All right.
Right. I'm going to bug you.
Like if you go on my Twitter account and you watch the clips that I was tweeting from the All-22, you listen to the sound, you'll hear like a bunch of people talking behind me. That's because I was doing that while I was displaced from my room. Oh man, but all right. Anyway, that's it. But okay, so you're good. No more highlights. We can get to the bad stuff.
Let's get to the bad. I know we can't wait to rip apart some folks.
Yeah, people have been eagerly awaiting me to talk shit about some stuff. I think
I've got my pitchfork ready for penning.
Yeah, there we go. But all right, this is Inside Black and Gold. Jeff Nowak, Steve Geller. Subscribe. We will be right back. All right, and we are back on Inside Black and Gold. One more segment to go, and this will be the negative Nancy portion of the program. Because there was a good bit of negatives. We talked a lot about the positives.
I lied. I just want to reel back one quick positive. I forgot linebacker Willie Gay. I thought really looked like a dude that you can rely on, and I'm excited to see more of him too.
I mentioned Willie.
Back to the neck. Oh, did you? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I did kind of throw him into that kind of quick spiel with like Kool-Aid, Willie, and Jamal. I thought had good days. But no, I agree with you. I like Willie. I think Willie's going to be a guy that we can see some really fun stuff from this year. I did tweet out a clip of him making a nice play in the backfield. What annoys me, and we're going to get into the negativity here. What annoys me about it's like people are addicted to being angry about stuff. And like I tweeted the clip of Willie making a nice play in the backfield, and within seconds, one of the responses was, "Oh, but we extended Pete Werner." I'm like, well, okay. So
okay, right. What does that mean?
Why are we being mad about Pete in a clip about Willie making a play? They can play at the same time. Like, I know, crazy. Willie's going to be your starting Sam linebacker. Pete's going to be your starting Will linebacker. Demario's going to be your starting Mike linebacker. And I really like that trio. And you can get it on the field more often because I know Willie can cover a little bit better than Zach Bond ever could, right?
Yeah, good to have a plethora of good players. And with Werner, he's a guy you've brought in, you've been developing him, you like what you see. Shoot, when they let Onyemata and Caden Ellis, everyone was all up in arms. Oh, these were homegrown guys we let walk. Well, you kept a homegrown guy.
Yeah, right. Like it's not a problem to lock in good young players on reasonable contracts. And I think the reason you do that now is, because you didn't have to extend him now, but he's in a contract year. And I think if you're the Saints, you look at how he's performed in camp. He's been really freaking good in camp. You asked him to show up. You put a little fire under him with Willie coming in terms of, okay, you have a roster battle now. And this is not the 3-down segment that we promised. But like, I think the reason you extend him now is because you're like, I think he's going to have a big season. And it's probably going to be a lot more expensive to do this in the offseason. We're going to have competition.
Right.
And rather than do it now and kind of give him some security, because I do think you expect a big season from him. And hopefully he can get past that shoulder injury. And
he's already hurt. That's what I was going to say to you.
Yeah. But no, that's only my only issue is it's like, you don't have to, not everything has to be negative, right? Like one guy making a nice play does not mean you should be talking shit about a guy who wasn't even on the field. So I don't know, kind of just like it's the preseason.
Anyway, back to the negative though.
Back to the actual negative stuff. Okay, so we're not going to take long here. First team offense.
Yeah,
that was rough.
Easy, right?
That's rough. You do have to come with a caveat, like I mentioned earlier, like that's not the offense that you're going to see in the regular season, right? Like that is the most milquetoast version of the offense that you could possibly imagine. And even Derek kind of talked about this. It's like you see stuff and you're like, oh man, like I know what we could do here, but you're just not showing it. And so take that for what it is. That said, the blocking was a huge problem. Derek, the funny thing is, people are going to complain about the deep ball to Olave that was kind of off. I put that on Trevor Penning. He got completely blown by on an inside move. That's a problem. It's something we've seen. He gets in a lot of trouble on inside moves because he kind of, when he panics and he reverts to, Deuce would call this like catching, right? And it's he needs to be aggressive with his hands, and instead he kind of sits back and waits, and then he just kind of he's not getting any contact on the guy at all. He just gets blown by. That's what happened on that deep throw to Olave. Probably forced the quarterback to throw it a second before he was ready. He's trying to throw with a little bit of anticipation, and he just didn't get it there. I wouldn't say Olave had a ton of separation, so it would have been a tough throw to make even with some more time, but it definitely came out early. The funny thing is, what I would say is Derek's worst throw of the day was the one that was actually caught by Olave. And so there was the one that got batted up. That was near interception. That's tough. It's, you're just trying to sneak it by the guy, and he made a play on the ball. The incompletion to Olave was, I think I tweeted this as well. If you want to go see the clip, it was more of an issue of timing than anything else. Like Olave kind of got jammed up down the field. He wanted a penalty. I think he kind of initiated the contact, and that's why the defensive back got away with it. But that threw off the timing. And so when he's coming out of his break, the ball's already in the air. If you ran that 10 more times, you'd probably get it a little bit tighter. But that's kind of what these preseason games are for, is kind of getting that timing down. And that was more the issue. Like the location I thought was fine because, we talked about hospital balls last year, right? Like I saw some people, he needs to throw it higher. No, if you throw it higher on a comeback and the guy has to go up and put his hands over his head to make that catch, he gets speared in the back. And that's how you get receivers hurt. So the safe throw there is, lower outside. He comes back to it. He can catch it, go to the ground, because you're not getting yacked there on a comeback. So, I don't have an issue with where the ball was, especially in a preseason game where the worst thing that could happen there is not an incompletion. It's Chris gets hurt, right? So I don't have an issue with the ball itself. It's just a timing issue. But the ball that actually did get caught by Chris for a first down was a terrible throw. Chris is kind of going on the out. If he puts that ball, if Derek puts that ball on his outside shoulder, he catches it, turns upfield. It's probably a 20, 25-yard gain. Instead, he leaves it on his back hip. Chris makes a great play and tears it away from the defender. But that's a bad throw. But no one's talking about it because it was a first down completion. And
ended up being a plus play, right?
Yeah, and that's why I hate results-based analysis, because I guarantee you in the meeting room, that's the throw that Carr's going to get criticized for, not the ones that everyone's complaining about. So we'll go from there. But yeah, the first team offense, it wasn't just Trevor Penning. There was bad blocks on the edge. There was a run play on second down after Penning got beat for that deep ball that went incomplete. There was I don't know if, Foster talked about, there was a lot of miscues. He was the guy on the edge. I don't know what his responsibility there is, but he bypasses the rusher and goes to the second level. And there's just the right defensive end just has a clear path to the running back, and he just never had a chance. And that was a run on 2nd and 10, which created a 3rd and long, which you never had a chance on. And this offense all day long, I could have told you, if you're sitting there in 3rd and long, don't hold your breath. You're not going to be converting a lot of 3rd and longs this year. And that's just going to be a fact of this offense. If you cannot generate positive yardage on 1st and 2nd down, you're going to get into trouble. Now, you're going to get it every now and then, but this is not going to be an offense where you're constantly going to be converting in 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10. You're going to be asking Trevor Penning to sit there in a pass set, and that's just not where he thrives. And you're going to go from there. Trevor Penning specifically, we talked about this, he's the opposite of A.T. Perry. The lights come on, and it seems like it goes blank. And all of the technique, all of the stuff you've worked on, all of the plans, all of the mental stuff goes out the window, and he just panics. And, we'll see. Here's the thing. It was the first game of the preseason, right? So you don't expect the guy to be peaking at that point. Now, you want to see a better performance than he had. And there was it's tough because there were several that he didn't necessarily get beat on, but he just got kind of bull rushed back, and kind of the pocket got dicey, right? And so you could say it affected the throw even if the guy didn't get there. There was one that there was a stunt that he and Landon Young, and neither one of them picked it up. You know, like I don't think any of the offensive line outside of maybe Eric McCoy had a good day. Fuaga was fine. He had a couple rough reps, but it's like, okay, rookie, first preseason game. I'm not gonna hold anything against him. I didn't see him let up a sack or a ton of pressure, so I'm good with that. But like there was a stunt that it was Darius Robinson, who I love that guy. Like he was one of my favorite players coming out, and he looked like a stud in that game. Brian Baldinger tweeted a good breakdown of his 10 snaps, and he just ran them ragged. And there was a stunt that, you know, neither guy picked it up, and they kind of bumped into each other. And then so the defensive tackle kicks out to Trevor's side, and Trevor's trying to block Darius Robinson, and he just gets bowled over, and he just lands on his back. And it's like, oh, you gotta anchor, you know. And it's like he's such a strong guy that he doesn't anchor well. And Duke Manyweather, who's the guy from OL Masterminds, right? The camp that Penning went to, where he worked with Teron Armstead, he tweeted like, yeah, it's just a guy that he looks like he just abandons all of his technique and just doesn't trust anything. And that's what you saw. And so definitely a negative, right? Like I'm definitely, you're concerned about where Trevor is. Right. And this is what DA said when he was asked about it on Sunday.
Look, I would say there was some good things that Trevor did. I think there's some things that he's still got to work to improve on. It's his first, game playing right tackle, so I'm not overly concerned about that right now. And yet I think we all understand that we've got to improve, and that's what we'll be out here working to do. I saw some things that I hadn't necessarily seen out here every day at practice from a technique and fundamental standpoint. Yeah, and so I think that's the key is for all of these guys, and in particular, guys that are trying to establish themselves, is like you see these things out here at practice, and you see the fundamentals, you see the technique, you see the improvement. And then you want to make sure that you're able to kind of see the same thing in the stadium, under the lights, all those kinds of things. So I chalk it up really to a first preseason game, and let's see how we improve from here.
Make sure you bring Coach Allen some lozenges on Tuesday.
It sounds like he's been yelling.
Yeah,
but. Yeah, so I agree with DA there in the sense of like there's a lot of people who would probably say bench him now, don't even bother. What I will say is you're talking about the first preseason game. Again, you're not expecting a guy to be peaking in that game. You'd like him to look better than he did. You got to give a guy the chance to correct his mistakes, right? And it's not like you're talking about someone who started all last year. You're talking about a guy who hasn't played since week 5 of last season. And when he did, it was not going well. You've now switched sides of the line. So there's technique that you're installing. There's stuff that you're flipping. I don't think anyone should have expected it to be perfect. Now, I think you have to give him an opportunity to go out and practice this week and come back in week 2 of the preseason and see if he can be better, right? Like that always had to be the plan for Trevor, is you're going to go out there and you're going to work and you're going to improve. And hopefully by week 1, you are where you need to be. He is not where he needs to be in week 1 of the preseason. If you go out week 2 against the 49ers and you don't improve at all, you look like the same kind of deer in the headlights guy, then I do think you have to start seriously looking at, okay, who are we going to play at right tackle? Because it can't be him. We aren't there yet, right? And so hopefully that was kind of a wake-up call. Again, first real action since week 5 of last year at a new position.
You do worry, though. You mentioned it, obviously, going into the DA cuts, too. He says it. It's like, that's not the same guy we're seeing at these practices even. It's like something happens when the lights come on or whatever you want to say. When it's game time, you get a different Trevor.
Yeah, no, and I agree with that. And so again, if you see that again, if he can't look at that, fix some of those mistakes and look like a guy who can get it done in week 2 of the preseason, then I think you do have to really start looking at a different route. The problem is, and this is the second down, the depth of the offensive line isn't much better, right? Like we can. I think we're at a point now where everyone's staring at Trevor Penning on every rep, being like, "What did he do wrong? What did he do wrong now? Oh God, he did it again." And then you kind of ignore everything else that's happening. But like there was there was some solid reps in there too, right? That's the thing. You're only going to see the reps that he did terribly on. Right. You're not going to see the reps where it's like he was fine. But the problem is when he's when he does lose, he loses hard, and there's no redeeming that. But there was one rep that, like the screen I talked about with Jake Haener, I tweeted it to kind of highlight, okay, Jake made a really nice adjustment here and got the ball to Cedric Wilson on the screen. And the first reaction is, wow, what is Trevor doing? Oh my God. So there's this kind of, people are looking for reasons to be angry about Trevor Penning, and they're ignoring the fact that it's a screen. You're not blocking the guy. You're bluffing the pass set and you're getting out. So it was like, well, why didn't he block him? That's the scheme, right? Now, I don't know exactly what his assignment is, but I don't think you're trying to chip there, because if you chip a guy and chuck him right into the passing lane, that's not helping you. So you're trying to get him to rush upfield so that you can throw a screen behind him. So he did that right. I actually think his get off has been good. You know, we talked, like everyone complains about Lane Johnson because he's false starting constantly. Well, he's not, because in the rules, it's kind of a nuance where you can get off early as long as it's your kick step, if it's your back foot, if your right foot in this case, because he's the right tackle now, if you can get that kick step before it hits the ground, the ball is snapped. It's not a false start. It's just a good get off. And I actually think that's been an area that he has been good. And I saw a few people saying, oh, he false start. He didn't false start. And that's been a conversation that's been going on for years. The left tackle for the Chiefs, I can't recall his name, he gets the same treatment. But it's really just, hey, if you can get off, get off. But he gets downfield, and then, you know, there's a situation where there's a guy coming through and he has him lined up, but, you know, the wide receiver was Kevin Austin on the outside. You know, I don't know exactly what Kevin Austin's assignment is there, but what he does is he cuts back in and tries to take that inside block that Trevor had lined up. And so he cuts him, he gets him to the ground, but that's the guy who ends up making the tackle. And because the receiver kind of cut in and took that block, Trevor's kind of stuck. And he actually makes a pretty athletic move. People are going to make fun of him because it was kind of an awkward looking thing, but he had to stay on his feet and try to get downfield to the next block, and he actually did. But I think it's like that was a mistake by the if I had to, I would guess that's a mistake by the wide receiver. But because everyone's watching Trevor Penning with a microscope, you're not looking at that, and you're only seeing, okay, this is a mistake by him, and in reality, I don't think it was. But you know, that's just an example. Like, you're talking about the O-line depth, you're talking about blocks on the edges. None of it went right. I thought Lucas Patrick was okay at guard. He struggled hard when he shifted into center. You know, like Caesar had a couple plays that I was not great, but again, you know, first preseason action, I'm not gonna look at it too harshly. Oli Udoh, right? If you're looking at, okay, who's gonna start
the drive killer
tackle if Trevor's not there? Oli Udoh, I don't think had a strong day either. You know, and he had back-to-back penalties. One was a hold, one was a false start. Now he was at guard. I think his weaker position is guard. If you had to kind of rank, like, okay, where would you prefer to have him? It would be tackle. But I don't think he's looked like a starting NFL tackle either. So you'd be kind of, okay, Landon Young. And yeah, he's probably right now, if you had to pivot and go away from Penning, it would probably be Landon Young at right tackle. But I don't, you know, he's in that James Hurst territory of like, can he get the job done? Yes. Is his ceiling very high? No. So we will see. But again, I'm not going to go into full-blown panic mode right now. I'm going to give him a chance to come out in week 2 against the 49ers and improve. And if he can do that, then great. If he can't, and he seems to be the same deer in the headlights, like I said, then I think you have to make a decision. But right now, stock definitely did not go up. And if it's not going up, to me, for Penning, it's going down.
I've been applying too much football speak to my own, I guess, analysis or just life in general. But don't get too high off the highs, not too low off the lows. But yeah, we're looking hopefully to build into this next one. But yeah, Trevor Penning had a second chance to make another great first impression moving over to the right side, and it unfortunately didn't happen.
Yeah, no question. It was a rough start, to say the least. And we'll have to go from there. But yeah, I think the way I would phrase it is like, no one is as good as they look on their best day or as bad as they look on their worst day. So the truth is always somewhere in the middle, and hopefully that's an example of Trevor's worst day. and we'll go from there. I think he played 10 snaps. I would say 3 of them were good. 7 of them, or I would say 3 of them were good, 4 of them were bad, and a couple of them were, and the others were neutral. And if you can get to the point where, you know, instead of that, 4 of them are good, and maybe 1 of them are bad, and the rest are neutral, then I think you can handle it. You can't have 3 full cell snaps out of every 10.
Was Doug Marrone the Leo meme yesterday pointing at the TV going, "Told you"?
Probably. But we'll see. Okay, one more, and I don't want to be harsh on the young guys. Again, it's the first preseason. If I had to kind of put a stock down in terms of, I had some people saying, hey, this is a punter battle. We're going to see a punter battle. This Headley's job is in jeopardy, whatever. I think you kind of got the answer to that in this game in terms of, I want consistency out of the punter position, right? You only have, I don't know what, on a good day, 5 chances, maybe fewer, to impact the game from the punter position. And how do you do that, right? Either you flip the field from when you're backed up, or you pin a team deep when you have an opportunity to pin them deep. Matt Hayball, I wouldn't say he got necessarily any really strong opportunities to flip the field. He had one kick that I think it was a 61-yard punt, so he would have kicked it from, plus 30, right? He kicked it down inside the 10, and great leg, cannon leg. That is probably his best strength. Is he definitely has a stronger leg than Lou Headley. And so, yeah, the field flipping punts, you probably get a little more out of them. My problem is even that punt, you would say, okay, the term is outkicked your coverage, right? That ball gets returned to the 25-yard line. So even a 61-yard punt, you're talking about, okay, it's a 40-yard net, and it looks cool and it's fun. And, maybe some good things happen. The guy mishandles it and you can really flip the field. But when you're talking about this team, you're looking at a special teams group that wants to know what it's getting out of its punt group, and it wants to take away that return part of the game, right? Because if you're allowing a return to the 25-yard line, then you're in a situation where, okay, you're one broken tackle, make one guy miss, and suddenly you're going from a 20-yard return to a 30-yard, 40-yard, 50-yard return, right? You don't want that to be part of the equation. So you're going to go with Lou, who you kind of have a feeling of what you can get out of him. For whatever reason, people don't return his kicks, and it's kind of awkward. It looks weird sometimes, but if it's awkward and weird for the defense too. And so Lou had 3 chances to pin a team deep, right? So, from that, I'd say, hey, if you're kicking from beyond your 40-yard line, I want that ball inside the 20. And if it's out to the 20, that's a loss. And if it's outside the 20, it's a big loss, because you want punt yards gained, which would be, okay, anyone can go out there from the 50 and punt it through the end zone. So you start at the baseline of 20 should be the worst case scenario.
Right.
And so Lou kicked 3 times in those scenarios. He had one at the 10, one at the 13, one at the 14. So punt yards gained, you would say that is 27 yards gained, right? Matt had, I'm not going to look at the 61-yard kick because that's kind of outside that range where you probably, getting in the ball at the 20 would probably be a win. But the other 2 kicks, you're talking about plus 40-yard line. So you put the 20-yard line as the baseline. He had one that went into the end zone, one that came out to the 25. So one guy had plus 27, one guy had -5. That's a big difference. And, that's what I've seen throughout camp for Matt. I watched one day, he had, I think, 4 kicks in a row from the 50-yard line going to the end zone. And, I really like Matt. I think he's got some real upside as a punter, but I think that was a good example of why this isn't really a punter competition.
Yeah.
At this point.
Well, I will say impressive for Hayball, obviously, that 61-yarder, because, man, it looked like it went off the TV screen. I couldn't believe it.
He crushed that one.
Yeah.
But again, okay, so it's a 61-yard kick, but your net was 40.
Yeah. Right.
Would you prefer, so if you had to pick one, would you prefer a 61-yard kick that came out to the 25-yard line or a 45-yard kick that doesn't get returned at all? And I think if you're the Saints, you're saying, I want the one that I know what I'm getting.
The positive there, though, out of this punting conversation is Sweet Lou looks good right now.
Yeah, no, and I think Lou's looked good all preseason. So it's not like he's doing anything to lose himself the job. If Matt went out there and really, really looked great and pinned those kicks deep, also had the 61-yard kick, I think I would be singing a different tune right now. I just don't see that. I don't see the consistency that I want to see out of the punter. And at least out of Matt, I do see the consistency that I want to see out of Lou. So
yeah.
And the funny thing is Blake Gillikin was the other guy. Blake Gillikin was the punter for the Cardinals, and there was 2 back-to-back punts, one by Matt and one by Blake, that illustrate exactly why Lou Headley is the punter right now. Because there were two situations where you could have pinned the guy deep, pinned the other team deep, and instead the ball went into the end zone and it ended up being a net of like 31 yards. Like Matt's last 2 punts were a net of 31 yards. Blake's kick was a net of like 29 in that instance. And so that's kind of the give and take. Is like, yeah, these guys can bomb it, but where's the precision? And that's where you are. And here's the thing. I know that's what Darren Rizzi wants, right? Like I like, we know that. So we're seeing it, and that kind of confirms what you're looking for. If we kind of had a demonstration of like, no, Darren wants the guy with the monster leg and you're going to figure out the coverage, then maybe I'd be saying something different. But like, again, we know exactly what Darren is looking for, and it's what Lou did.
No, as you mentioned him with Gillikin being there, I completely spaced on that and forgot going even to our pregame coverage, didn't mention it. And then when I saw him, I was like, oh my goodness, it's a Saints special teams fest here.
Yeah, I don't have any other real negatives to point out, so I'm gonna just mention. Okay, also shout out to Tony Jones. It kind of felt like the Saints scored a touchdown there at the end.
You kind of mentioned early on with the negative, Foskey, he played but yet failed to record a single statistic.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. Yeah, I mentioned him.
Yeah,
in the previous segment, in the pass rush segment, he definitely struggled. He had the most defensive snaps of anybody. And he definitely didn't impact the game. So we'll see. You know, again, you're talking about a young player. The problem is you're talking about a young player who also played against the third teamers on the other side. So you do want to see an impact, and that was disappointing for him for sure.
I might be more concerned with Foskey's development even now than Penning's.
See, I'm not, only because I don't need Foskey.
I hear you. I'm just saying as the player.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, just because I'm saying because there's been very few moments for Penning at least, and we'll see what happens here. But I just feel like Foskey's lost in space.
I mean, we'll see. Like he's another guy that it's like, okay, it's preseason week 1. You don't need to overreact. Yeah. But I definitely wanted to see more from him. Again, to me, it's like if you just wanted to put them on an even playing field and say in a vacuum, what's the level of concern about their development? Yeah, you could probably have that conversation. The problem is for Trevor, I need him to start and protect the quarterback. For Isaiah, it's like, okay, if we have a couple injuries, we're going to be relying on you.
So, you're part of this rotation that looks stocked and stacked right now. Yeah, whereas I get it. Yeah, Penning is like, dude, we need you, bro.
Yeah, like I need Penning to play every snap. I don't even know if you're going to have, like, you might have Foskey inactive just because where do you get him snaps? Like, you have 4 guys ahead of him on that depth chart. How many passes are you going to have active?
Right.
So, like, you know, he's going to have all the opportunity in the world to practice and get better. But yeah, it's tough. No, it's for a second round pick. You'd like to see more. And that's where you'll go. You know, Dallin Hawker had a weird day. I thought he had a couple nice blocks. He had a couple blocks that did not go so well. I thought he had a really nice catch from Jake Haener earlier in the game, and I think it was also from Jake, the one that he caught and fumbled that A.T. Perry, rescued.
Correct, right.
And I think that actually did go down as a catch for Hawker.
Yes,
because they would have called it a catch and fumble, even though it didn't hit the ground. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, because Dallin, he was actually the second leading receiver. He had 3 catches for 24 yards. It would have looked like a much worse day if that's a fumble that gets recovered by the other team. So he's kind of in the middle. Like I did think he had some nice plays. Like even that catch and fumble was a nice catch and run. Just got to hold on to the ball. So he's kind of in the middle. Like if all he does is catch that and go out of bounds, then he's probably in my stock up. So, you know, it's a fine line.
On that category of, you know, a slight ding on James Robinson. He had a fumble, got stripped. Luckily, it went out of bounds, or else, he would have been on the shit list too.
Yeah, there was no turnovers in this game on either side.
Right.
Which is surprising because of all the pressure, right? Like usually when you see a game that's like pass rush is dominating and there's constant pressure on the quarterback, you know, it's like, okay, rush throw, tip ball.
Right. Well, you mentioned tip ball, that second play of the game, first pass, it was a slow motion kind of effect watching it back home. And it was like, no. And thankfully, I don't know how even it got finally to the ground, but nobody came up with that from Arizona.
You could have played a full game of Jenga while that ball was in the air. Like it was in the air for felt like minutes. Like if it was like how does this not come down? I think Cedric Wilson needs to get some credit because I think he kind of got a hand in there and batted it down. I can't remember. It might have been Lucas Patrick who helped rescue that ball too from getting intercepted. But yeah, there was opportunities for turnovers. So you're correct. They just didn't happen. So we'll see. Yeah, I think that's it. Michael Jacobson, I don't think really did much to stand out. Clayton Tune, Bobby's best friend, had a nice day, I thought, on the other side.
I remember hearing Orgy's name a few times, so I think he had a decent showing.
Yeah, Orgy got, he was involved a lot. DeMarco Jackson got in at the mic. He had some nice moments, but I think he probably had more down than up in terms of like if he's isolated in coverage, I think you're in trouble because there was the Cardinals' biggest play of the day didn't happen because it bounced off the tight end's hands, but that was going to be a 40, 50-yard catch and run for the tight end. Yeah. Because DeMarco kind of his coverage, he hasn't played a ton of snaps in coverage. So, he's going to improve there, but he got a little too shallow on multiple reps against.
That's a good recall there.
Yeah. And so like those weren't perfect, but like that's a good example of like, results-based analysis is a problem because you're going to look at that and say, oh, it was an incompletion with DeMarco in coverage. Good result. But that's not something you look back on tape and you say, oh, great job. So we'll go from there. But I think that's it. And we talked a lot about positives and negatives. To me, it's more so, it's not about being negative on a player right now. It's about identifying this is where you this is where you did well. This is where you didn't do well. And I need you to improve here. I need you to continue doing this. Right? And that's true whether it's Trevor Penning. That's true whether it's Derek Carr. That's true whether it's Spencer Rattler. That's true whether it's Jake Haener. That's true whether it's Jamal Williams. That's true whether it's anybody. Other than Willie Gay, because I thought Willie Gay had basically a perfect day. So we'll go from there.
Yeah, now there won't be that, I guess, build up as much for Sunday against the 49ers without the joint practices, but you still expect to get obviously a lot of good work against a team that's considered the elite of the NFCs.
Yeah, the game itself will matter a lot more than it probably did going in.
Right, exactly.
Forward to that game so much, other than maybe seeing the backup quarterbacks kind of get a lot more run, right? Like I expected to see that be like, okay, Spencer gets the first half, Jake gets the second half. Now I think you're going to see that be more Derek gets a couple series, maybe plays the whole first quarter, and then you go from there. And hopefully we can see a little bit more production out of that group. But yeah, that's all I got. One other note though, Willie Gay, big Bon Jovi fan. They did like a Living on a Prayer sing along break, and he was vibing out. He's the Juice Man. That's it used to be the Juice Boys,
right? And
now I think his nickname is the Juice Man. So
I was gonna say he'll fit in perfect with DeMario since he can definitely get in the Juice Boy gang.
He's definitely the vibes guy. Like I feel like that's why people like Quan, because he was the vibes guy, and like DeMario's kind of that emotional leader. But it does. I don't know if he has that kind of like he's the vibes guy, if that makes sense. And Pete's not that guy either. So I do think there's value there. So
no, I've talked about it before. When Quan was here, I've never seen players ready like fall behind and follow blindly and really get behind him like so instantly.
Legendary.
Yeah, legendary.
But all right, that's going to wrap up this episode of Inside Black and Gold. It's a day off. I'm going to take a trip up to LA today, see what that's all about.
Nice.
I've already been there, but I'm going to try to disappear as much as possible.
I'm going to stay in air conditioning.
Yeah, not here. Here's fine. Now, 110 degrees in Phoenix, which apparently isn't even hot by their standards. Like, I was walking to the game and I was looking around. I was like, there's people just hanging outside in like jeans. It's 110 degrees. I'm dying.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the closest I've ever felt like I'm like in an oven. And then I asked the guys, like, hey, where's the media entrance? Like, oh, it's that way. I walk a quarter of a mile only to get to a guy who says, actually, it's back that way. Go all the way around the stadium. Keep in mind, I'm wearing like jeans and a backpack. And I'm like, guys, I might die.
It's like, now you're just messing with me here.
Yeah. Well, my wrongful death lawsuit will name you. don't even know your name. That guy. Anyway.
Well, definitely be more of those. You'll be having better temperatures in Santa Clara, California.
Yeah, there's nothing that would make me move to Phoenix. You couldn't do it. Like, I live in New Orleans. Like, it's not hot. I mean, it's not exactly comfortable in New Orleans. 110? No.
Yeah, after Katrina, I ended up actually in Phoenix for 6 months and came right fucking back home. I could not wait.
Like, it's not hot until it gets like to 125. That's what the Uber driver said to me. And I was like, you, sir, are a lunatic. This is a funny, I sent the picture of the weather to Claire, and she responded, there's a King of the Hill gif, or a King of the Hill like meme, where it's just like, it's like this city should not exist. It's a monument to man's arrogance. It feels like you're standing directly on the sun. But anyway, that's it.
Yeah, welcome back to some cooler temps, and hopefully we get some cooler action out at training camp.
And 1 week from today, I will be back home petting my dog, so I'm excited.
Woohoo!
But all right, who dat? Go Saints. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Again, like I say every time, if you got 90 minutes into a podcast and you haven't subscribed yet, that's on you. But all right, thanks, everyone, for listening. Be easy, y'all.
We're going to have to get that Rattler sound effect for the next show.
Let's see. I don't have a rattler.
Yeah.
There it is. All right. Easy, y'all.
Later.